Hello and welcome to Learn Autodesk Fusion.
This is a 10-part video for beginners. In this video,
It will take you from a complete beginner to building your first 3D models.
in part 1, I'm going to be showing you 2D sketches, Extrude, and also Fillets. And if you haven't heard of these before, don't worry, I'm going to be explaining them as I go along. But first, I want to quickly show you how you can navigate the user interface. For the example, I've put a 3D model in there, but don't worry that you don't have this. It's just so that I can demonstrate the features here, and so you can see more clearly the effects of the movements. This is the main area that you'll be using in Fusion, because it's where your model is displayed. In the canvas section, you can right click and it brings up a menu of frequently used items, or alternatively something that's relevant to the function that you're about to do. And here we also have the view cube. You can use this to rotate your model and view it from different angles. You can also click on it and rotate the view to how you like it. If you click on the home icon, it rotates it back to the standard view. You can also right click on this and you'll get other options such as changing the perspective and other items. Next, we have the data panel. So, if I click this button up here, it's going to show me the data panel. From here, we can create new projects and also organize our files. Fusion is a cloud-based software, so all these files are saved to their cloud. Now here we have the refresh button, a search button, and then we can close this panel from here. Next, we have the application bar, and here we can click File and we have options for saving and also exporting our designs. We have a button here for saving, and then we have an undo and redo button. And here we have a home button, which brings up the home page. Then we have our design here, which is called the file name. And this kind of works like an internet browser, where we can open up a new tab and create a new design, and then we can close that. So your application bar might look slightly different depending on which version you're using. Now here we've got extensions, the job status, notification center, and also help. And then on this one you have your profile. So if I click on that, we've got our Autodesk account, and we can also change our preferences from here. And we can also sign out of our account if we wish to from here. Next, we have the toolbar. This is going to be one of the main things that you're going to be using. So in this toolbar, we can either choose what we want to do from here, or alternatively, we've got these tabs running across the top here. So we have tabs for solid modeling, surface modeling, meshes, sheet metal, plastic, utilities, and also management. And you can also see, for example, if I create a new sketch, it's going to give an additional layout to the toolbar. And this gives me additional options that I couldn't see before that are relevant to this button. Now, below the canvas is the navigation bar, and I don't use this too often personally, to be honest. These selections on the left-hand side here allow different options for viewing your model. But if you're using a mouse with a clickable scroll wheel, then you can change the view much more quickly than using these buttons. So that's why I don't use these too often, but it could be useful for you if you're using a trackpad or alternatively a mouse such as the Magic Mouse. And here on the right hand side you have your display settings where you can change the visual styles and also have alternative options. Next, we have the browser on this left hand side, and here you can see the assembly and all of the components inside that assembly. And if I drop this down, you can see the bodies, the sketches, and other items that make up those components and that assembly. You can also turn on and off the visibility of these by clicking on this eye. And next we have the timeline, which shows your model's history. So if I click the play button here, you can see it runs through the design. And I can also go backwards and forward steps. And you can also make modifications to each of the elements in here. And these are the elements that make up the user interface of Autodesk Fusion. So now that we have an understanding of how to navigate the user interface, let's move in to 2D sketches, Extrude, and Fillets. Okay, so I'm going to teach this tutorial in the default settings. So I'm going to reset these back to defaults. And to do that, you go to the circular icon in the top right hand corner. This will either be your initials or your profile picture. And then you click on that and you click on preferences. And then inside preferences, you go to the restore defaults button. Click on OK here and then press apply and then press OK. And I'm going to be teaching these tutorials in millimeters. So if you come over here to what Fusion calls the browser, and drop this down for the document settings, this will bring up a box where we can choose the units of measurements that we'd like to use. So you can see here that you can also change this to inches if you feel more comfortable with inches. But for this tutorial, we're just going to stick with millimeters. And now we have our units, I want to talk you through how saving works in Fusion. So Fusion is a cloud-based software, and your designs will first of all get saved to the cloud. So first, we need to come over here and click on Data Panel. And then we click on the New Projects button, and we're just going to keep this simple and call this Smartphone. Now we double click on it, and then we go inside the folder. So the way Fusion works is that you build everything as components, and then they come together as an assembly. So click on New Component. And we want to call this component Smartphone. Then we click on OK. And now we can see that our component is in the browser. We haven't actually saved our product yet because you can still see here that it still says untitled. So I'm going to click on the save button and rename this as Smartphone. And then I'm going to click on the save button. And you can see that it renames it up here and also renames these. So we want to make sure that we're building inside this active component. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to draw a sketch. So I'm going to click on the Create Sketch up here. Then this brings up the planes and we can choose which plane we want to sketch on. So, what is a plane, you may be asking? Well, I don't want to get into too much technical detail for the first tutorial, but a plane is essentially a flat surface where you're able to draw 2D sketches. And for this tutorial, we're going to be sketching on what's known as the XY plane, which is highlighted in blue for this screenshot. And later on in the series, we'll go into this in more detail and how these are working, but for now, I just want to quickly get you started on making your first 3D model. And then this rotates the view to show the plane that we're drawing on. And for this model, we want to create a rectangle. So I'm going to click on this create here, and I'm going to click on rectangle, and then I'll click on this center rectangle. For this model, we want to use a center rectangle. Now, there's many ways we can do this, but it's good practice to draw your model starting from the center point if you can. Clicking on the middle center point constrains your model, and now we can type in the dimensions. And just a quick note here, the dimensions already selected. So you don't need to try and click on it, it's already selected and you can just type in the dimensions that you want. So this smartphone is going to be 145mm long, and then we can zoom out using the middle mouse scroll wheel. Then if you press the tab button on your keyboard, it moves you down to select the width. So the width is going to be 70mm. And you can see that it's drawn the rectangle to the size that we want it now. So once I've clicked, this confirms that the drawing has been defined. And as you can see here, it wants me to draw another rectangle, but we don't want to do this now, so we press the escape key. Just a quick note here, what happens if you've drawn something by accident and you want to delete it? Well, what you can do is click down the left-hand mouse button, draw around it, and then hit the backspace on your keyboard. So after this, we've still got this sketch palette open, so what you want to do is you want to click on Finish Sketch and confirm that. Now you can see that we've drawn our rectangle, but it's actually still looking at it from the top down, so we need to rotate our view. To do this, we click the Home button in the top right hand corner. Next up, we want to do an extrude. To do this, first of all, we need to click the extrude feature here. And this allows us to create a body from this sketch, and it will give us our 3 dimensions for our smartphone. So the average smartphone is around 9mm, so we want to type in here around 9mm. Well, actually, this looks quite thick, so let's do a slimmer smartphone. Let's say around 7mm. Yeah, this looks good. So now we click OK. So now you can see we've drawn our rectangle and we've extruded it out, which has created this body. And we can see this in this browser over here. So the body here is body 1. And then the sketch we've drawn is here. So you can see the sketch, this is the sketch. And every time you create a body from a sketch, it makes the sketch invisible. And we can also see down here in our timeline what we've drawn. So this is actually really useful. If you ever make any mistakes or want to go backwards, then you can just drag this timeline backwards or forwards. And it's basically a history of the design at the bottom here. So now what we want to do is we want to add the fillets. And fillets are basically like curved edges to the object. So I click on the fillet, and then I want to click on all of the sides. So I click here and then here, and basically what I want to do is create fillets for all of the sides. So I'm just going to do it like this. And if you want to rotate your view, depending on the settings that you've got, what you can do is hold down Shift on your keyboard and then click your middle mouse wheel, and that will allow you to freely rotate your model. And you can also either use the buttons on the bottom or your mouse's scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. So I'm going to carry on clicking until I've got all of the sides. And then we want to type in a dimension. So let's try 1mm. Maybe a bit more. Let's say 2mm. And then this adds the fillets to our smartphone. So press OK. Okay, looking good. Now we've got our curves on our smartphone. So what we want to do now is add the camera to the back. So if we rotate our view so we're looking at the bottom, then what we can do is add a sketch to this body. So we click on it, and then we click on Add Sketch. And as you can see, this rotates our view. But it's actually put it upside down here, because you can see here it says bottom and that's upside down. So we want to rotate our view until we're looking at it the right way round. Then we're just going to add something simple, like a simple camera bump. So we click on Center Diameter Circle. So I'm just going to draw, let's say around 10mm here. So type 10mm into the dimensions box and then hit Enter on the keyboard. And we can actually use dimensions to define where the sketch is. So I click on the Sketch Dimension button. So I'm clicking the center point of the circle and then the top edge of the smartphone. To create a dimension between the 2 points. So let's put around 10mm away from this edge, and then also put 10mm on this side as well. And you need to click to choose a place where you'd like to put the dimension before you can start typing it in. And then we click Finish Sketch. Then what we can do is extrude the camera bump, and we'll be using the same technique. So we click Extrude, and let's say around 2mm maybe. Yeah, 2mm looks good. And then we press Enter, and that draws our camera bump. So now the final thing that I want to teach you in this tutorial is how to create patterns. So you know with some smartphones, you actually have multiple cameras. You could just draw them one by one, but instead of doing that, if we click on Create, and then we click on Pattern here, for this we're going to create a rectangular pattern. So you can see here that it's asking which objects we want to select, and this is actually going to select the whole thing. But we don't want to make a pattern of the whole thing. So if we come over here to Bodies, and we drop this down, and we choose Feature, then we just select the camera bump only. And then once we've got this selected, it's asking us for the axis. So for this, it's basically the direction that we want the pattern to repeat itself in. For this one, we want to click on the x-axis, which is the red one, and we can drag this out as you can see. And then this has created the pattern for our camera bump. So I think around 25mm would be good for this one. And as you can see, this one's actually created two axes where it's drawing them from. So axis 1 needs to be 1, so we're repeating ourselves in only one direction, and then axis 2 is 3. So once we've got that, we just need to scroll down and click OK. And this adds the pattern to our smartphone. And what we can do now is just finish that off with fillets. So we can fillet those two and give them a bit of a bump. Not too much though, maybe around 0.3mm? Yeah, something like that. And this, again, will add nice fillets to the camera bump. And once that's done, what we want to do is we want to click on the Save button. So now we're going to be moving on to part 2, which is sketching curves, construction lines, and also sweeps. So let's start a new file and let's get started. So come up here and click on Save. And now you can see your folders. So to create a new folder called Coat Hanger, click on this drop down. And you can see that I've already created mine here. But to do this, what you want to do is click on New Project and type in Coat Hanger. This will also create it in the data panel that I showed you in the last video. And we can call this Coat Hanger. And then we click on Save. Next, what we want to do is we want to create a new component. So we come up here and we click on New Component. And we also want to call this coat hanger as well. Then we click on OK. And then once we've done that, what we want to do is start sketching. So we come up here and we click on Create Sketch. And we click on the ZX plane here. First of all, we want to click on the line tool. And then we want to click on this center point. And we draw this up vertical at 90 degrees. And a quick important note with the line tool here, it's kind of working like a bungee cord. So I click once on a point to anchor it to that point, and then, if you can see here, it's moving around and following my mouse. So we want to position this up at 90 degrees. Then, on the side here, you can see that our dimension is already selected, and it's currently at 63mm. But we want this to be 60mm. So without having to click on a dimension, because it's already selected, we type on the keyboard 60, and this enters 60mm. And you can see, because this is a dimensional line, it's also been constrained to this point, and this has turned the line black. And ideally, we want to have black lines in our sketches, because this means that they're fully defined. Although sometimes this is not possible, but for most sketches we would like to do this. And this helps to avoid any errors if you ever go back and make any modifications to your 3D model. So let me just show you a quick example, and you don't have to copy this. If I draw a random line in the middle of space here, you can see that that line has now turned blue. And this is because it can move around wherever it wants to. It's not in a fixed position. So that's the meaning between the black and the blue lines. So I'm going to delete this now by pressing on it and then pressing the delete on my keyboard. So the next thing that I want to show you is a concept that's used quite a lot in 3D modelling, so I want to get you familiar with it. So I'm going to click the line here, then I click on this point here. And then I draw again, coming out at a right angle from this line. And I'm going to type 50 on my keyboard and then hit enter. And then you can position these dimensional lines around where you like them. It's best to keep them neat and tidy and out of the way of your sketch. Now, if I click on this line, you can see that there's different line types. So the first one here is a construction line. And if I click on that, you can see that it changes to these dots. That means it won't be used as part of this drawing. And it's actually a line that helps you to draw other lines. And the second one is center lines. So if I click on that, you can see there's a slightly different pattern for this. And this is to draw any lines through the center of your drawing. But in this case, we don't need to use either of these at the moment, so we just click off the center line and leave it as a normal line. Next, we draw a line down and we want to keep it at a right angle, and we make this one 140. And then we press enter. Then we can zoom out using the mouse scroll wheel. And we can also pan using the middle button on the mouse. Alternatively, if you don't have a mouse that can do that, you can use these buttons down here to pan, orbit, and also zoom in and zoom out. Next, we want to draw a line coming off this way, so we click on this sketch. And this one wants to be 90 degrees again. And it's going to be 50mm, so we type that in and hit enter. So this is more of a unique coat hanger that we're drawing here, and it's actually one that goes over the top of a door. So it would be hooked on the top of a door, and then it would hold your coat. Next, we click the line tool again, and we want to draw up 90 degrees and this time 20 millimeters. Then we hit enter. And let's just reposition this dimension so we've got this all clean and tidy now. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to do a sketch fillet. So we click on the fillet, and then we go around the model and we want this to be 10 millimeters. So if you don't have this set to 10 millimeters, you can type it in here and we want to go around on each corner. And you can see here that when I did this, a warning sign actually came up. And this is because we have lost some of our dimensions or our constraints that were used on this sketch. Ideally, it's better to use modelling fillets compared to sketch fillets where you can. However, sometimes it's unavoidable. So for this model, it's okay. And once that's done, I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to click on Finish Sketch. Then I'm going to click the Home button so you can see our drawing in 3D space. And if I come over here and drop this down and then drop this down to see our sketches, you can see here that it's with a padlock symbol.
This means that our sketch has been fully constrained.
And it's called Sketch 1. So now we want to do a new sketch on the XY plane. So we click on the XY plane here, and we want to click on Create. And then we go to Rectangle and we click on Center Rectangle. Then we want to click on the center point. Now this one's going to be 60 millimeters. So I type that in on the keyboard. Then I hit Tab to move over to the other dimension. And this one's going to be 5 millimeters. Then I hit enter and I click Finish Sketch. So it's really important to rename your sketches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this, and you can see sometimes when you double click on it, by accident it puts you back into the sketch. But for this, we don't want this. So we can click on Finish Sketch. And if we click once, and then we click again slowly afterwards, you can see it's highlighted our text in order for us to change the name. And we want to call this one Path. Hit enter or click outside the text box in order to confirm your writing. And then we want to call Sketch 2 Profile. Now we go up here, we click on Create, and we click on the Sweep tool. From here, you can see we've got our profile. So we click on our profile, which is the rectangle. Then we click on our path, which is the shape that we want it to follow. Now you can see that it's drawn our coat hanger in 3D. And we want to click OK on this. We can also come over here into bodies, and you can now see that we have our body as one. And we can rename this as hanger. Then what we want to do is we want to add some fillets to the edges. So if we click on the fillet, and then we click on this face, then we rotate our model around, and we also click on this face. And these are going to be 0.5 millimeters. Then we click on OK.
And then we come up here and we click on Save. Now, moving on to part 3. In part 3, we're going to be learning reference images, splines, and also revolves. So let's start a new file and let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to save our model. So we come up here and we click on Save. Then, once we've done that, we come down here to Name and where it says Untitled. And we want to delete this and we want to call it Greek Vase. And then we click on the Save icon. So once we have that saved, we want to come over here and we want to click on New Component. And under the new component, we also want to call this Greek vase, and then we click on OK. Next, once we have this, we want to make sure that we're working on this component. And now we're going to insert a canvas. So we click on Insert, and then we click on Insert Canvas. And I'm going to choose it from a file location on my computer. Your File Explorer will pop up, and you can choose to insert the canvas. So now this box comes up where you can see the image file here, and it's asking me which face to put it on. So I'm going to choose the ZX plane, which is highlighted in grey in this screenshot. And as you can see, that's inserted it. Now we want to change the view to the front view, so we click up here, and then we want to just reposition this, and we can use this square to do this. So we come over here and we reposition it on this line. And we're going to need to reposition it a bit in a minute, but first we want to change the scale. So what we want to do is click here on Canvas, and then we want to click on Greek vase, and we want to click on this button, Calibrate. And this is going to give us a way to be able to scale our drawing. So we click on the center point here, and then we click on the top of a vase. And we want to make this 300 millimeters. Then we click Enter. And as you can see, it's made it quite a bit bigger. So if we scroll out, then what we want to do is we want to move it back again into position. So I right click on it, I click Edit Canvas, and then using this square, I can just put it back to the center point. And then as well, a bit off to the right here. And you'll see why in a minute that I've only drawn half of it. So we click on OK, and then from here, we basically want to use this guidance to trace it. So I'll click on Create Sketch, and then I click on this plane again. And for straight lines, I want to use this line tool. So I'll click on the center point to draw it, and then I click here, and then I click here. Now we've got this center point, we want to add this to a curve. So if we try just a line tool for this, obviously it's not working because it's not going to stretch in the right way. So what we want to do for this is use a fit point spline. So I'll click on this point here to connect the drawings, and with as little clicks as possible, I want to draw the curved surface of this pot. So I'll just click here, and for the sake of this tutorial, I'm only going to do this roughly just to show as a demonstration. And then we press on Enter. Using these control points, these black ones, we can just move this into the position that we like it. So that's that one, and we want to have this as close to the line as possible. But like I said, it's just very rough for this one. So you can go through and make it much more neat and precise if you like. And you can also use these green handles. You can make adjustments using these as well. So once we're happy, we need to hit the Enter key, and we've adjusted the shape to how we like it. And then once that's done, we want to finish off this sketch, so we can use the line tool. So then we click the center point and we draw to the top, 300 millimeters. And these just want to be normal lines. Now we draw another line to draw it across, and draw down the part to connect up these lines. I press the Escape key and then I click OK. Now you can see here something that's important. This has turned to blue, which means it's a closed shape. So when it's a closed shape, you'll know that it's completely closed, and what I mean by that is that there's no gaps between the 2 points. And the way to tell that it's a closed shape is because the inside has gone blue. Now we want to click on Finish Sketch. And once that's done, we want to rotate the view around. So now we can see what we've drawn in 3D, and we want to hide the sketch canvas. Next, we want to click on the Revolve tool. You can see that it's automatically selected our profile, and it's asking us for an axis. But if it hasn't automatically selected it, then you can click on the sketch. This is the line that we drew running directly through the center of the model. And the axis for this is going to be this center line. Now you can see that it's gone round 360 degrees and rotated round the whole pot. But by using this handle, say if something doesn't need to be 360 degrees, you can actually reduce this. I'm just showing a demonstration here. But for this model, we do want to use 360 degrees. And that's going to create a new body. So once that's done, we click on OK. And after this, we can use the shell tool. So the shell tool allows you to hollow out a body. So once we click on the shell tool, we click the top here, and we want to go for around 3mm. Yeah, that looks good. And as you can see, this has made the inside of the vase hollow. And then what we want to do is we just want to add some fillets on here, just to smooth things out. Just a quick side note, it is better to do the fillets usually before you do the shell, but for this demonstration, that's okay. So maybe just some small fillets, maybe something like 0.3, and then click OK. And there we have our complete Greek vase. So let's click on Save. Welcome to part 4. In this section, we're going to be learning extruded cut and a circular pattern. So let's start a new file and let's get started. Let's draw our engine block then. So to start with, let's click on the save up here and let's call this block. And now let's create a new component and let's call this block as well. Okay, so let's make sure we're drawing inside of this component, and the first thing we want to do is we want to use the skills that we learned in our first video. So we're going to create a sketch of a rectangle. So choose the XY plane here, and we're going to choose the center rectangle. And then we're going to start from the center, and we're going to draw this 430 by 600mm. Once we've done that, we're going to click on Finish Sketch, and we're going to turn it around to make sure that it's 3D again. And we're going to do an extrude, and we're going to extrude this out by 300mm. So now we've got a very primitive engine block shape. And we want to make some cuts into it. So I'm going to click on this top surface, and then I'm going to click on Create Sketch. Then I'm going to click on the line tool, and I'm going to sketch from the center point. And then click the top edge, making sure the line is set to 90 degrees. And what I want to do with the first one is to create a construction line. So I click X and that changes it. Then here, make sure your line has been changed to a construction line. This is indicated by changing to a dotted line. Next, we want to draw a circle at the center point of this line. So it's going to be marked the center point with a blue triangle. And I'm just going to draw this now, let's say 120mm. Once it's been drawn, I click on Finish Sketch, and then I'm going to rotate this back to 3D again. So I'm going to do an extrude. So you click on Extrude, and then you click on the circle. And if you watch, as I drag down, it's actually cutting through the surface, and this is indicated by it turning red. So here we've got the profile that's been selected, and what we want to do is we want to do it on one side. And then you choose a distance to extend. So you can either do this by dragging this handle down, alternatively typing in an accurate number here, and you can see that the operation has changed to a cut. So we want to click OK on that. And now what we want to do is we want to make 6 of these holes. So to do that, we click on Create, and then we click on the rectangular pattern tool. Instead of doing them one by one, this is a much quicker way to do it. And in object types, change bodies to features. Then select the feature in the timeline. Then choose the axis and select the line on the furthest edge of your rectangle. We can move this using the blue arrows, but first we want to change some settings. And we want to change the direction to symmetrical. And then for axis 2, we want to drag this out, so instead of 3, we want it to just have 2. And then we put it in line. So you can see that it's going to draw our pattern. We've got the quantity of 3, which is here, and we've got the distance of 200, which we can do precisely with this measurement. Alternatively, we can drag out these handles. And the second pattern we've got on axis 2. Then we're going to click on OK, and that's going to cut through. And now there's another thing that I want to show you with cutting. So let's say that there's more detail in this. For example, if you click on a surface, click on Create Sketch, then click on the line tool to start drawing a line. So what we want to do is we want to draw from the center, and this is going to be 90, and then hit Enter. And then we want to hit X again on the keyboard to make this a construction line. And then we want to draw a circle of 25mm and hit Enter. Now, if we come up here to create, and then we use the circular pattern tool. Let's click on the object that we want to make a circular pattern. And then let's click on the center point. It's going to be the center of this circle, and then we need to choose how many. Let's say 7. Now you can see that it's drawn circles all the way around the inner circle. So instead of drawing a square pattern like we had before, it's actually doing it in a circular pattern. Now, if we click on that and click finish, let's move this back to 3D. And what we can do is we can press Extrude and do the same thing again. Then, if we have all of these sketches selected, we can actually cut through, and then we press OK. So I know that's just a very rough idea of what an engine block would actually look like, but you get the idea of how you can sculpt things out of a block. And the last thing to do is to save your model. Welcome to part 5. In this section, you're going to be learning offset planes, lofts, and guide rails. So let's start a new file and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to save our file. So we come up here and we click on save. Then we just want to call this bottle. Then we click on save. Next, we click on new component. And we'll call this bottle. Then we click on OK. Now we have a bottle. Now this is set up, we want to make sure we're drawing inside this component. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to draw a sketch. So we click on it and we click Create Sketch. Then we click on this plane here. Next, we want to create a center rectangle. So we click on Create and we click on Rectangle. And then we click on Center Rectangle. Then we want to click the center point of the drawing. And we want to make this 60mm by 75. And then we hit enter. Now we want to add some sketch fillets to this. So we click on each corner of the rectangle and we make these 10. And we hit enter again. Now we click on Finish Sketch. Now for the next stage, we want to create an offset plane. Now in Fusion, you can't just sketch anywhere. You need to create some planes to sketch on. So I'll click on Offset Plane. Then I click this plane here, and we're going to go up by, let's say, 75mm. And then we click on OK. Now we click on this plane, and as you can see, we can create a sketch on it. So we want to do the same thing again with a center rectangle, and we want to click on the center. Now let's make this one 40 by 60, and then we hit enter. And we want to add fillets to these as well. So we fillet all these, then we hit enter, and then we click on Finish Sketch. Now, if you zoom out a bit, you can see we've actually drawn up higher because we've drawn it on this higher plane. And we want to do one more of these. So click on Offset Plane, click here, and let's drag this up to 140mm. Then click on the plane and click on Create Sketch. And we want to draw this time a circle. Then we click on the center point and we make this circle 35. And we hit enter. Then I drag out this dimension just to tidy up the sketch and we click on Finish Sketch. Next, we want to create our rails, and these rails will guide the shape of our bottle. So we click on Create Sketch, and then we click on this plane. And first of all, we want to create a few guides for our rail to go along. So we click on Create, then we click Project, and we click on Intersect. Now, if we move this back round again to 3D, we can create some intersecting points by clicking on these lines here, and we also click on the circle. And this creates points that we can connect our rail to. So now let's click on OK. Next, we want to create a fit point spline, so we click on it. And we want to go back round to viewing this from the front. And you can see these purple dots now where we've done the intersection, and it just makes it easier to connect our rail. So once the spline is drawn, we press on enter to confirm that, and then you can see these green control points where we can shape our bottle. So we can adjust these how we like it, and I'm currently creating a shampoo bottle here, so I'm just going to adjust these handles. Yeah, to something like that. Now, once you're happy with your shape, we're going to mirror this to the other side, and you'll see why I'm doing that in a minute. So I'm going to create a center line. So what I do is I click on the line tool, and then I draw from this center point. I'm going to draw this up 50 millimeters, and it's really important that this is set to 90 degrees. Then I hit enter. Then next, we need to change this to a construction line. So if we tap on the X on our keyboard, this will change it. Now, if we look at our model in 3D again, what we want to do is we want to mirror this line. So we click on mirror, and then you can see one object has been selected. And it's actually selected this center line, which is not the one we want. So we can remove that. And for this, we need to select this line here. And the mirror line is going to be this center line that we've just drawn. Then we click on OK. And then we can finish the sketch. And from here, we can create what's called a loft. So we click on Create, and then we click on Loft. We want to click these in order from bottom to top. It's important to click these in order because it builds differently depending on how you click on it. And then for the rails, we want to choose this side. Here, make sure to click on this plus icon. And from here, you can see why I've done two rails, because it squashes out the other side. So the second rail that we want is this side, and you can see that it's drawn it nicely now. So now we can click on OK. And this has drawn our bottle shape. Now we're going to practice some of the skills that we've learned in previous tutorials. So we can fillet this bottom edge here, let's say 5 millimeters. And then we can click on OK. And we can also shell out the top. So we click the shell and we click on the top. Let's do maybe 1 millimeter. No, actually let's do 2 millimeters for this bottle. And then we click on OK. Then we can add some fillets to the top here. Let's say 0.5. Yeah, that looks good. So we're going to add this to these two edges, and then we're going to click on OK.
And that's our bottle drawn. So let's click on Save. Welcome to part 6. In this section, we're going to be learning Emboss, deboss, and also how to emboss on a curve. So let's start a new file and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to save our file. So we come up here and we click on Save.
Then we just want to call this file Emboss. Now we click on Save. Next, what we want to do is we want to create a new component. And we're going to call this one Shape 1. Then we click on OK. And now that we're in Shape 1, what we want to do is create a sketch. So I click on Create Sketch. And then here I'm choosing the XY plane. and I click on that. Next, we want to do something a little bit different. Instead of using a center rectangle for this one, we're going to use a 2-point rectangle. So we click on the rectangle. And just a quick side note on this, you can actually access these shapes using shortcuts on the keyboard. So if I press R, that's going to select the rectangle instead of clicking on it. Now I'm going to click on the center point. And I want this one to be 80, so I type in 80 without clicking anywhere. Then I press the tab key on the keyboard and I want to make this one 100mm. Then I hit enter on the keyboard. And then I click on Finish Sketch. And now you can see we've drawn our rectangle. And now we want to extrude this. So I click on Extrude. Alternatively, you can use the keyboard shortcut E. And now we're going to extrude this by 10mm. And something new that I want to show you now is taper angles. So you can use this box here for this, and this will essentially give you an angle to your extrude. So type in this box here, 5. And you can see this is actually tapered outwards. For this model, we don't want this. So we're going to change this to -5, and that's going to move that inwards. Now we can click on OK. And next, I'm going to show you how you can emboss text. So click on this top surface here. Then click on Create and click on Create Sketch. And from here, we want to create some text. So click on Create and then click on Text. And we want to draw this box, starting from this point here on the top left-hand edge. All the way down to the bottom right-hand corner here. And then we click on that. Now this brings up a new text box, and we want to click on text here, and then we just want to type in here, hello, in capitals. Now, you can see here that it's actually written it backwards. So, in order to flip this, you can play around with this until you get it into the right direction by clicking on these buttons. I've also used these buttons here to align the text to the center and also to the middle as well. So click these two to get it into the center. You can also highlight this and change your font, and you can also use bold or italic text here. And this height one here allows you to make your text bigger and smaller. So we want this to be 10. And here is the character spacing. I'm not going to use it for this example, but just to show you, if you enter these numbers in here, it's a percentage. And this basically widens the spacing between the letters. But for now, let's leave that as 0 and we click on OK. Now, once that's drawn, we want to click on Finish Sketch. And then we want to rotate the view round again so we can see this in 3D. Next, we want to click on Create and we want to click on Emboss. And then from here, if we click on Hello as the sketch profile, and then we choose the face that we want, and we click on the top one here. Once we've clicked that, as you can see, we want to emboss this out by 2mm. And yeah, I think 2mm for this model is okay. And here you also have the option to deboss your model, which cuts into the model itself. But for this one, we want to use the emboss. So we click on OK. And as you can see, that's embossed our model. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to fillet this. So we click on the fillet tool. So we want to click on this face here, and we also want to fillet the top surface of these letters. It's a bit fiddly to hit the actual faces of these letters, but we want to do this to quickly emboss the whole thing instead of going around and clicking on every individual line. And we want to make this a measurement of 0.5 millimeters. As you can see, this is also embossed coming up from the top face here. So now we've done that, we can click on OK. Now let's say we're not happy with that and we want to do something else. Well, what we can do is click on the timeline here, hold down Shift and select all three of these. Then if we right click on them, we can press Delete. And this brings us back to where we were when we first had this initial extrude. Next, what we want to do is we want to click on Create Sketch and we want to do the same thing again. And this time I'm going to show you a different example. So first of all, what we want to do is we want to click on the line tool. And then we want to come across this line here until we see a small blue triangle. And this basically means that you're in the center point of this line. And then you click, and what we want to do is make this 90 degrees, and we want to make this 20 millimeters long. Then we want to click on this and press X, and this will create a construction line. Then next we want to click on Fit Point Spline. Then we want to click here. Then we want to click the top of the construction line. And we also want to click here. Then we hit Enter on the keyboard. And we can also click on this and press X to make this a construction line. So next, what we want to do is we want to click on Create Text. From here, we want to click on Text on Path. And you can see this wraps the text around our path. But for this model, on mine, it's gone upside down, so we want to flip this around until we have it in the right direction. And then, again, we want to type hello in here. And we want to have this center aligned. And you can also have your placement either above or below. But for this, we want to have it on the path. Then we click on OK. And then click Finish Sketch. Then we want to use the Home button to rotate this back to viewing it in 3D. And we do the same again. So we click on Emboss, then we click the face, and then we click on the letters. And we can emboss this again. And we want to do a deboss this time. And then we click on OK. And you can see here that it's cut a hole out into the model with the text that we wanted. Now I'm going to click on Save. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here and I'm going to click on this active component, and I'm actually going to create a secondary new component in this model. So I click on New Component and I want to call this Shape 2. And then I make Shape 1 invisible by clicking on this eye here. Now what I want to do is I want to create a sketch, and I want to click this plane here, and I want to draw a center diameter circle. Or alternatively, you can use the shortcut C on your keyboard. Then I draw this from the center point, and I want to make this 60mm. Then I hit enter and I click on Finish Sketch. Next, I click on a circle and I click on Extrude. And I want to extrude this 100mm. And then I hit enter on the keyboard. Now what we want to do is we want to click on a sketch and we want to click on this plane here. Then we click on Create. And then we come to Text and we want to draw the box from here to here. And we also want to type in this one, hello. And we want to make sure that we're on the button Text. Now, you can see on this one I've changed the font slightly, so you can choose a font here that you like, and it doesn't really matter too much which one it is. Then, I've changed this one to 7, just to make sure it's not overlapping on these edges here. Then, this is a little bit confusing and will take working out on each model, but basically I've had to do this one back to front in order to emboss it in the right direction, to be able to read the words properly. You'll see what I mean when it's completed. Then make sure this is center aligned and also aligned to the middle. Then I click on OK. Now I'm going to view this in 3D again and I click on Finish Sketch. Next I come up here and I click on Create, then I click on Emboss. And the sketch profile that I want to choose is the text. And the face is this cylinder. Now, as you can see, it's embossed our wording. And again, we want to choose 2mm for this one and an emboss. Then we click on OK. And as you can see, that's actually drawn it around this curved surface now.
And once that's done, we want to come up here and click on Save. Welcome to part 7. In part 7, we're going to be learning export, import, holes, and fixings. So first of all, we want to save our file. So we come over here and we click on Save.
And we just want to call this box. Then we click on Save. So now what we want to do is we want to create a new component and call this box. Then click on OK. Now that we have our new component, we want to draw a cube. So come over here and create a sketch. And click on this plane here. Next, we want to click on Create, click on Rectangle, and then click the center rectangle. Then we want to click the center point. Bring this out, and we want to do 50mm. Then hit Tab, and do 50mm again. Then press Enter on the keyboard. Then we click on Finish Sketch. Then we click on Extrude, and extrude this out by 50mm again. Then click on OK to confirm this. Now next, what I want to show you is importing and exporting. So I'm going to click on Save here, and we're going to export this box. So, as I mentioned in the first video, Fusion is actually a cloud-based software. So when you save these, for example, it's actually saving to their cloud. So if you want to export this to your own files, now what you can do is come up here, click on File, and then Export. And depending on what version of Fusion you've got, you might have different options here. So if you click this drop down here, you'll be able to choose different file types. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video, but as a brief overview, if you want to save something to reopen it again in Fusion, then it's best to save it as a .f3d file, because you'll have the history of your design and you can go back to it and make modifications. Then, if you want to save something for rendering or animation in a program like Blender, for example, then it would be best to use either a FBX file or an OBJ file. Alternatively, if you want to save something to open in another CAD program, like SolidWorks for example, then it's best to save it as a step. And then, if you want to save something for 3D printing, then it's best to save as a .stl file. Now, that's just a really quick overview, and it really does depend on your use case, so it might be different for you depending on what you're doing. But for now, for this file, I'm going to save this as a .stl and show you what I mean. So I'm just going to export that to my desktop. And now that's exported, I want to show you how to import the model back in. So if you come up here and click on Insert, and then we insert it as a mesh. And I'm going to select that from my computer. And I choose it from my computer desktop, and I choose the file box. So you can see that it's re-imported my model. And just to make this less confusing, what I'm going to do is go and move this over to one side. And then I click OK. Now you can see this has come up in a different colour. And then if we drop these down, we'll be able to see that. And you can see that it's highlighted it as a mesh. And meshes may be something that you come across during your journey learning Fusion, and especially if you're into Fusion for learning how to do 3D printing. And they are more difficult to work with inside of Fusion, so just bear that in mind. And also, something else that I want to show you is Inspect. So Inspect basically has loads of tools that allow you to just analyse your model. So I'm going to show you a few of the basic ones in this tutorial that could be helpful for you. So we've got the measurement tool here, and if I click on this, you can use this to see different measurements on your model. So if I click between these 2 points here, I can analyse that this is 50mm. So I'm going to close that now. And then another one I want to show you is section analysis. And this allows you to take a cut through your model to see inside it. And it's just for viewing, it doesn't actually cut the model in half. I'll show you what I mean. So if I click on the section analysis, then I actually want to click on this plane here, but because the cube's in the way, I'm not able to. So what I can do is go to my origin plane here, click on it, and then you can see it's here. It's the XZ plane. So I click on that, and now you can see that it's cut halfway through my model. Then I click OK, and I'm just going to spin this around so you can see what I was talking about earlier. This is where body 1 is a fully solid body. But then you can see this mesh here is actually hollow. So that's the difference between the two. And I've gone into more detail in meshes in another video, so I'll leave a link to that in the description below, and you can watch that after this video if you'd like. So now we actually want to delete this mesh box here. So we right click on it and press delete. And then you can also see here we've got our analysis. And we actually want to hide this section analysis. And now we go back to viewing our box in 3D. So the next thing that I want to show you is something that's really helpful and can also save you a lot of time. And for this section, don't copy this yet because I want to show you something first. So if I press create here and then I click on hole, and then what I want to do is click on this top surface. And you can see here that it's creating a hole. And then I'm just going to move this to the center point. So this might look a bit complicated at first, but it's actually quite straightforward. These holes are really useful for creating holes if you're planning to put screws or a fixing inside that hole. Basically here you can see the type of hole that you want. And these are really helpful for making sure any fixings fit into that hole. So let's look at hole type here, and you can see you've got a simple hole, a counterbore hole, which is basically this section here, and then a countersunk hole. And a countersink is this section here. It allows the screw to be flush with the surface. And then we've got hole tap type. And for those people that are not sure, a tap is basically a thread for a hole that allows a screw or a bolt to be fastened to it. So if you've ever built any IKEA furniture, you'll know what I mean. So you can see here we've got simple, then we've got a clearance, and then we've got a tapped one here. Then we can change here drill point to either flat or at an angle. And something to note here is that you can see the tap here. This is only just a representation of the tap. It's not actually physically there in the model. So if you're creating something that's going to be a physical part, either with 3D printing or another way, then you're going to need to use the molded checkbox in the hole settings. And we also have an option here for thread offset. This will be helpful depending on what screw you're using. So first of all, I'm actually going to cancel that. And please don't follow this step yet, I just want to show you something. And you'll see why, because if I come up here, click on Insert and then Fastener, you can actually see that there's a library here, and it has a load of different bolts, screws, nuts, also rivets and washers. So this just saves so much time. Instead of having to draw out these things independently, you can just use this library, and you've got a full catalogue of different parts. So I'm going to choose this one for now, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to take the information from this screw. So I can see that the size is an M3 and the length is 6mm. So I know I'm not going to get this exactly right on the first time, but it really depends on the screws that you're using for your project, and I just wanted to show you this as an example. So now you can start to follow along with me. So if I go back to the hole and then I click the top here and I position this in the centre. Now yours may start off looking slightly different, so just have a look at the hole settings that I've got there and copy my settings for now. Now we know that the size needs to be M3. And the total length was 6mm. Then here, rotate your view background to looking at the model in 3D, and now I want to change this one, so I've got a countersunk head. And I also want the diameter of this to be 6. So we can either use this handle here or alternatively type this in. And now let me show you how to add a screw. So I click here on OK, and then we just go back to the first one that I selected. Then we want to click on countersunk head, and we click on this one here. Then you can see we can position this using our mouse, and we click on the surface of the countersunk hole. Now, this one's actually gone red because it doesn't exactly fit the hole, but that's okay for now. I just wanted to show you this as an example. And you can see this warning comes up here, but it still does allow you to insert it. So then, once that's done, I hit enter. And you can see that it's added my screw to the hole. And then what we want to do now is come back to our section analysis. And we're actually going to see that, yeah, okay, it is overlapping a little bit, but that's okay for this example, because you'll use different screws and different holes for your project, so as long as you make sure for your project they fit right with one another. I just wanted to give you an idea of how it's working in this video. And you can see over here, it's also created a new folder called Fasteners. And also, you may be wondering what this is over here. Well, this has actually created a joint in the assembly,
and a joint defines the position of two components inside the assembly.
And then we come over here and we click on Save. Welcome to part 8. In part 8, we're going to be learning components, assemblies, and also joints. So let's start a new file and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is want to save our file. So we come over here and we click on Save. And we want to call this Fixings Box.
Then we click on Save. Now we want to create a new component. And we want to call this box. So in today's tutorial, we're going to be creating a small box to keep fixings in. This is just something that I thought of just to help demonstrate what I want to show you today. Then we want to click on Create, then click on Sketch, and we want to click on this plane here. Then we come up here to Create, and we click on Rectangle. And we want to click the center rectangle. Then we want to click on the center point. And we make the first dimension 90 millimeters. Then we hit the tab button and make the next one 140. Then we press enter and we click to finish the sketch. Then what we do is we click on this, we come up here and we click on Extrude. And we're going to extrude this out by 50 millimeters. And then we click on OK. Then we want to click on the shell tool and we want to click on this top surface here. And we're going to shell this by 3 millimeters. And then we click OK. Now we move around to the back of our box, so we're on this back section here. And then I click the back and I click the sketch. And we want to use the line tool here and we want to click this top point here and come down 5 millimeters. Then we click on this line and we press the X to make this a construction line. Now we click the line again and we want to draw all the way across until we've drawn a line across the body. Now we press the Escape key to finish the line tool and we click on Finish Sketch. Now what we want to do is extrude this out and we just want this section here extruded by 5 millimeters. And we want this to be joined and then we click OK. So we've got the basic shape of our box created now. And we want to create a new component. And this bit is really important. First of all, we need to create this as our active component. Then we click on New Component. Otherwise, it's going to create it inside of this box, and we don't want to do that. So we just want to call this one Lid. And then we press OK. And now you can see it's made the box translucent, and that's because we're working on the lid component now. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to click on Sketch and we want to draw on top of this box. Then we want to click on 2-point rectangle and we want to come from the side over here. And that will snap to it. Just make sure you don't come all the way down to the bottom here, we just want it to this point here. And we can click to confirm that. Then we press Escape to come out of the square tool, and then we click on Finish Sketch. Then we move this round into 3D again. We click on the Extrude, and we want to extrude this out by these two sections. And we want to extrude this by 3 millimeters. And it's really important that this is a new body, so we click on it and then we click OK. And next we want to draw a hinge on the side. So we want to click on the surface here and we want to create a sketch. And we also want this to be a 2-point rectangle as well. So we click the 2-point rectangle and notice it gives us some lines to be our guides for this model.
So I want to choose this point here, and then I drag this all the way up to this point here. Then I just press on escape and I finish this sketch. And I'm going to rotate this back into 3D, and then we can extrude this out and make sure you've got both sections. We want to extrude this out now by 3. And just double check that this says join. Now we can click OK. So the next step is to cut out a hole. So we click on this surface here, then we come up to create our sketch, and we come here. And I'm just going to quickly show you this in 3D now, because we want to make sure that it cuts through this section here. So to do that, we come along here by 2.5mm, and then we press X. So I'm going to click on the line tool, then I'm going to come up by 2.5mm again, hit the enter key and press X. And we want to draw our circle and make it 1mm. And this gives us a center point for our hole. And then we press this one and we press Finish Sketch. Now we want to do an extruded cut. So we click on a circle we want to extrude here, and we want to do it by 4mm. So you can see here we've got -4mm. Then we click on OK. Now you can see it's cut out the two components, the lid and also the cut in the box. So now that's our fixing box fully drawn, and we're going to create the joint. So we click on Save, and then we come over here to Fixing Box, and we want to make this our active component. Then we click on Joint. Now, actually, first of all, we want to make sure that we hide the box, so we can't see it here. And then we want to make sure that the first one snaps to this circle here. And be careful not to click the middle here. You really have to click right on the outside of this circle, and it will look like this when you click on it. And then we want to hide our lid and show our box. And we want to rotate our camera view around. And then we want to do the same again by just clicking on this circle here. Now, if we show our lid, we've got them both connected. And we want to go to Motion and change Rigid to Revolute. And you can see now that it's spinning around on this axis. However, there's currently actually a problem with where it's actually going, and it's going to clash. So if we click on this minimum here, you can see it also selects the maximum. And what you can do is use these flags and change this around the point where it's going to clash. So let's say the maximum the box can open is like this. And then we click on this one. And we want to take this round to where the lid's fully closed. So we've got our minimum here at 0 and our maximum at 180 degrees. Now, if we click on this play here, you can see that it's not going to clash with the box. And it's going to play an animation of the box lid opening and closing. And you can also go through these other ones as well, and each one does a different type of joint. If you highlight them, it explains what they mean, but hopefully this example helps you get the idea of how joints work. So once that's done, we can click on OK. And then you can see we've got this flag here now, so if I double click on this, it actually allows me to open and close my box lid just like this.
So then I'm going to press escape on my keyboard and I'm going to save this. Welcome to part 9. In this section, I'm going to be showing you primitives and also appearances. So let's start a new file and let's get started. The first thing that we want to do is want to save our file. So we come over here and we click on save.
And we want to call this one aftershave. Then we want to click on save. Next, we want to create a new component. And we want to call this one aftershave as well. Then we click on OK. So we've started to cover quite a lot of these tools now in the solid menu. And there's two more that you can see here, and these are really for creating plastic parts. So, if you hover over them, it will explain what they mean, but these can be more relevant for things like plastic injection molding, for example. Then, you may notice there's this section here that we haven't covered yet. And that's what I want to show you in this tutorial. So these shapes are called primitives, and they allow you to create primitive shapes much faster. There's some benefits to this, but also some drawbacks that I'm going to show you in this video. So I'm going to click the box here, and I'm going to click on this plane here. Then I'm going to change the view around to this top view. And I'm going to click on the center point. Now first of all, you're going to see one of the drawbacks straight away, which is you can't actually draw straight from the center point. And ideally for 3D modeling, it's better to draw your design right from the middle point. And the other drawback that you'll see in a minute is when you create this shape, it doesn't actually create any sketches. So if you do have a complex model, you might actually start to have problems further down the line if you need to go back and edit things, for example. So we want to make this square 25, so I'm going to type in 25 here. Then I hit tab on the keyboard and I make this other one 50. Then I press enter on the keyboard, and now I'm going to rotate this background to viewing it in 3D. Now, you can see that it's already drawn my box here. And just for a second, don't copy this. But what I want to show you is that you can use these handles to stretch out these sides like this. So that's one of the advantages, you can quickly change your shape's dimension, and it's much more easy to move it around. So we want to increase the height of this up to 70 millimeters. And then, once we've got that, what we want to do is a new body, and we click OK. Then, I'm just going to drop this down in the browser, and drop this one down, and I'm going to click on this twice, slowly, and that will allow me to rename it. And I'm going to call this one Bottle. And then I hit enter. It's always good practice to rename your features in Fusion, in case you're going back to it later on and you need to find something. So next, what we want to do is we want to click on this top surface, and we're going to create another primitive again. And this time it's going to be a cylinder. So I click the cylinder, and I'm going to click on the top. And we want to come across from the side here until we find the complete center point for our model. And you can see that it's indicated here by these lines. So then I click and I drag this out, and I want to make this 20 millimeters, then I hit enter. Then I'm going to turn this around into 3D, and I'm going to drag this up. And let's say for this one, 4 millimeters. And something really important here is that we want to change this from join to a new body. And then I click on OK. And I want to call this one neck. So we rename that in our bodies. And next we create another cylinder again. Then I want to click on this face here. Then as you can see, this circle comes up in blue to indicate the center point. So we click on this, and we want to make this one 22 millimeters in diameter. Then I hit enter. And we want to increase the height by this one up to 24mm. So I'm just going to type into this box here 24. And then, again, I'm going to change the operation to new body. Because a join would basically attach this to the neck, and we want this to be a separate body. Then I'm going to click on OK. And I'm going to call this one lid. Okay, so now we have the basic shape of our aftershave bottle. I now want to add some fillets to this bottle. So I click on fillet, and I'm going to fillet these edges. So I'm going to click these 4 edges here, and I'm just spinning that around now. And I want to do this one by 5mm. Then I hit enter to confirm that. And I'm going to be doing some more fillets now. So I'm going to fillet this top face here, and also this bottom face. And these ones, this time, are going to be smaller. These ones are going to be 2mm. Then here I click enter to confirm that. And there's one more fillet that I want to do. So I click on the fillets. Then I click on this top edge, and I also want this one to be 3mm. Then I hit enter. Okay, so now we have our bottle, and now I want to show you something new. So if I click on modify here, you can see here physical materials, and there's also these appearances. But the one I want to focus on today is appearances. So if I click on appearance here, and also the shortcut is A that you can see that a box comes up. And basically you have this library here where you can change the appearance of your model. So you can currently see that this is steel in our design. That's why it's in grey. So if we go down here into the library, and yours may not be open like this, it probably looks something, a bit like this at the moment. So then I'm going to go through these folders, and I'm going to click on Paint. And you may need to download these different ones. So to download them, you just click this download icon, and it will download to this location. And we want this one to be the paint, the enamel gloss black paint. So if I drag this over here onto the bottle, you can see that it actually changes the bottle to gloss paint.
Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on Save. Welcome to part 10. In this section, we're going to be learning the trim tool, offset lines, chamfers, and also surface modeling. Okay, so first of all, I want to explain a bit more about origins. So you can see your origins over here, but then if you come over here, it's actually displayed inside of these folders as well. So if I click on this eye, then you can see here that it actually shows my origins now. And if I drop this down, it goes into more detail. So the 0 here is the origin point. So this is at x0, y0, and also z0. And this is basically the coordinate system that gives you your drawing in 3D space. And if you click on the X here, you can see that it highlights it and gives us a coordinate across the axis, which is going along this way. And then the y-axis, which is going along this way. And then the z-axis, which goes up and down. So now, if I click on this plane here, the plane is actually a combination of x and y. So it's basically like plotting things on a graph. And as you can see, when I click on it, it's showing it on this plane. So that's just a bit more detail about what axis and origins and also what planes are. So I'm going to drop that back down for now and hide this. And the first thing that we want to do in this sketch is save it. So I'll come up here and I click on Save. And I'm going to be creating a fender in this video. And a fender is part of a car. And if you're in the UK, this is called a wing. I'm going to put a picture of one on the screen now. So I'm going to type fender in here. And then I'm going to click Save. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new component.
And we're also going to call this one Fender. And then click on OK. So now what I want to do is I want to start with this sketch. So I'm going to click on Create Sketch. And I'm going to draw on this plane here. At first we want to create a center diameter circle. Then I come to my center point and I click and I drag this out. So this is going to be 533 millimeters. And it sometimes draws bigger than your screen. So you can zoom out until you can see it. Then I click to confirm that. Then I'm just going to press the escape. And I'm going to drag this out here so I can see that. Next, what I want to do is I want to draw a line. So I'll come up here and I click on the line tool. Then I click on the center point again, and I drag this out until it crosses over this line here. And for this one, it doesn't actually matter what the dimension is, because it's just going to be a construction line. So I click, and then I press on Escape. And then I click on that again, and I hit the X on my keyboard. This makes it a construction line. Then I want to click on the line tool again. And then I want to draw this line up to cross over the top of this circle. It doesn't matter what the dimension of this line is, as long as it crosses over the top of the circle, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So then I click on it and I press X. Next, I want to use a new tool that I haven't shown you yet, and that's called the Trim tool. So, as you can see from this pair of scissors up here, it basically allows you to trim a sketch. So if I hover over this line here, you can see that it turns purple. And that means it's going to cut it out of my sketch. So when I click, you can see that it's actually removed a lot of the circle and just leaves this quarter. And this is what I want. And now I'm going to show you another tool, which is called Offset. So if I click on this, it will be the best demonstration to show you what I'm doing. So I'll click on this line, and you can see there that it's actually dragging this up. And it's actually redrawing this line. But in a particular distance away from where it is. So this is really helpful to save time with not having to redraw things that you've already drawn. And we want the dimension for this to be 30 millimeters. Then I come here and confirm that. Then I click on Finish Sketch. Now, you may notice that this is not actually a closed sketch, and that's because for this model, we're going to be using surface modelling. So currently, we've only been using the solid modelling. And now we're going to move over to surface modelling, which is more advanced. So if you click here and click on Home, you can see that we've drawn the wheel arch. And next, what we want to do... Oh, sorry, I've clicked surface here just to show you, but I want to click back to solid for now. And we want to draw an offset plane, so I click on Offset Plane. And we want to draw this from this face here and move it back 40 millimeters. Then I'm going to click on OK and I'm going to draw another sketch. So I click on Create Sketch. And then I click. It's really important here that you click on the new plane that you've just built. So click on that. And from here, we want to click on the Line tool. And we want to create it from the center point. And we want to draw this across 350 millimeters. And from the center. And then we want to click on this, and this is just going to be a construction line. And I'm going to drag this down here. Now, you can see that I'm currently having problems to change it. And that's basically because this drawing is in front of it. So if I drop this down to make this easier, then I come down to Sketches, and we want to hide this sketch. To get that out of the way. And then if you click on this, you can see that we're working in the right sketch now. So the next thing I want to do is to draw a line upwards. I want to draw this one 400. Now we can show our sketch again. So we can see the wheel arch. Next, I want to click on the line tool again, and I want to draw one across 500. And I'm just going to drag this dimension line up to tidy up this sketch. Then I want to draw slightly down like this. And this is going to be 80. Then I hit the tab key and the degrees is going to be 30. Now I press enter. Now, I want to show you something new here. So, if I click on Modify, and then come over and click on Chamfer, and I want to choose here Equal Distance Chamfer. Then, I click on that, and I click on these two edges. And you can see what this is doing. That's drawing a chamfer between these two lines. So I want to draw the 60 and then hit enter. And next, to make surface modelling easier, I want to add some fillets to these. So I'm going to fillet these edges 20. And this just makes a smoother transition. So there's 3 here, and you want to click on these ones. And then I hit enter on the keyboard. So I want to finish my sketch now and move this background to 3D. And I can see here that it's actually drawn an additional sketch that I don't need, so I'm going to delete this one for now. And then we can rename our sketches. So this sketch we want to call Wheel Arch. And then the other one, I'm going to just call this one Fender. So now we've got our 2 sketches. What I want to do is move up here to Surface and then click on Surface. And you'll notice here that we've got very similar commands to what we've learned before. So I'm going to click on Create and then click on Loft. And you'll notice some differences between Surface and Solid here. So then I click on Loft. Then, in the profiles here, I want to choose this bottom wheel arch first. And then I want to choose the second wheel arch. And you can see it stretched this across the 2. And finally we choose this line here. Now you can see that's drawn our wheel arch. And the benefit of surface modelling compared to solid modelling is that you can make much more complex shapes. As you can see, the program's worked out the best way to join these together. And it's a much more complex shape that we could make with solid modelling, so sometimes it's best to work with surface models when you're working on more complex shapes, but oftentimes it's more complex and it can be more difficult to work with surface models. You can also use rails to guide the shape, but we haven't done this for this tutorial just to keep it simple, but you can look back on my lofting tutorial and understand how that works. So then when we're happy with it, we can click on OK. And we can see that it's drawn our fender. But currently this has no thickness to it at all. So if I drop down this body here, you can see that it's indicated as a surface model because it shows it in orange. And then to turn that into a body that we can work with as a solid, what we need to do is click on Thicken. And we want to make this 2mm thick. So once that's done, we want to click on One-Sided, then New Body, and then we click on OK. And you can see here now that it's hidden our surface model and it's created this solid body, which is called body 2. So we can double click on this and call this fender, and that's created our car fender. And this is just a quick tutorial on the capabilities of surface modeling, and I'm planning to do a full tutorial series on surface modeling in the future. But there's a lot more different tools that you can learn. And one thing that I'd just like to say before you start going out and creating your own 3D models, before you even open up Fusion, it's a really good idea to start thinking about the way the design's going to go together. So this pen, for example, first I'll break it down into its individual components. And then I'd look at each element to understand what tool would work best for each part. Perhaps one section would work best as a revolve, but others may be better as an extrude, or maybe even a sweep. I'd understand how I'm roughly going to create the design first, and then open up Fusion.
Welcome to the bonus section. This is where I'm going to be showing you how to do renderings inside of Fusion. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a model of a new component, and I'm just going to create one quickly to give you an example.
So now we've got our model, and I'm going to move this into the render workspace. So to do that, I click on design, then I come down here and I click on render. Now you can see we're in the render workspace, and it won't look too realistic to start with, but I just want to show you the render settings first. And we have our browser like we've got in the design workspace, and from here we can see all the different elements of our design. And I'm going to go through these with you now. So if you click on this one, appearances, this is where you're able to change the appearances of your model. So I click on that, and now yours may already be dropped down, but I need to click this plus icon to drop this down. And here you can see what's currently being used on our design. This is the steel satin, so that's this one here. That's why it kind of looks like this kind of grey material. And then you can see the library here. So we have a collection of all the different materials that we can use. So for this model, I want to click on paint. And then you can see I've got different types of paints here, like this glossy black. And you may need to download these ones. So to download them, you can click on this little download icon here, and that will download them. And to change the materials, I simply drag this onto the model that I want to change. And you can see now that that's changed that to black. And we've got this in our design. And if I right click on this and press edit, I actually have this custom box here that allows me to edit this. So I can change the colour here, I can also change the roughness, which is how shiny the material is, and also how reflective it is as well. So now, if I click on done here to close out of that, this is how the appearance is working. So now I'm going to click on close. You can also position your view using this view cube. And this is how your camera is going to be positioned when you do your final render. So I'm going to move that into position now. Next, we've got the scene settings. So if I click on scene settings, I'm going to move this over here first of all. And then we've got the brightness. You can use this to increase or decrease the brightness of the lighting in your scene. Then we've got position. This allows you to position your environment to change your highlights and your reflections. And here we have background. This allows you to either view your environment for a background or alternatively a solid colour. Then we've got colour of the background. So if you've got a solid colour selected, you can change this colour. Now we have ground, and here we have the ground plane. This allows you to have shadows in your scene. This checkbox is for flattened ground. And here we have reflections, which will give reflections onto the ground plane. So I'm going to switch this on, and you can see here that additional settings come up for the roughness. And the roughness is basically how shiny that material is. So if it's set to 0, it'll be a complete mirror. Next, we have the camera, and this is currently on perspective. And the perspective view simulates how the human eye would see depth and also distance. So if you'd like a more realistic looking render, it's good to leave it on this setting. And here we have the focal length, and this works the same as a camera's focal length does. So product photography is usually shot at something between 50 and 100 millimeters. And if you'd like to learn more about this, there's a lot of photography tutorials that go into a lot of depth on this topic, and the same principle applies here. Next, we have exposure, and this again works in the same way as the camera's exposure does, so it basically tells you how much light the camera is letting in. And here we have depth of field. And depth of field is great for making renderings look more realistic. It makes the background of your image blurry, like a camera with a large aperture would do. So I'm going to select that, and then you can see this green dot comes up where we can choose where we want our focus to be. Then, on this button, we can save this as a default if we like. Or we can restore it back to how it was when we started. So now I'm going to click close on this, and we'll come back to that later. So next we have decals, and decals are basically like stickers. So if I click on this decal, and then I click on it, and then I'm going to insert that from my computer and drop it onto the face of this model. So I'm going to rotate this around and move it into the middle. And we can make this bigger or smaller. So we've got this one on the face that we selected, then we have the opacity, then this is for the dimensions, and also for the scaling. And we can flip it around here if we'd like to. So here we're going to click OK on that. Now, we can't really see this because it's a black sticker on a black background. So what I'm going to do is come back here and click on Appearance. And I'm going to change this to a different colour. Let's say grey. So this is the grey paint. And I drop that on here. And then I'm going to click on Close. Next, we have the Texture Controls map, and this allows you to position the texture of the material. It's particularly useful for things like wood. You can read more about that if you hover over it. Now, if we come back to Scene Settings here, and we want to click on Environment Library, and we have these different environments. Imagine these kind of like photography studios. It's basically the lighting in the room that your product will be sitting in. So I can apply these to the scene by dragging them onto the scene here. And you can see if I drag on this desert one, it's going to turn it more blue because it's reflecting the blue light of the environment. But for this one, I just want to use cool light. Now, I'm going to close this and click on In Canvas Render. So you can see here when I click on it, it starts to render it inside the canvas. And every time I rotate my view, it starts to re-render it again from the start. And I've sped this up for this demonstration. And on the bottom right, there's a progress bar for the status of the render. And now I want to create a ground plane. So then, if I come back to render here and move this down, I take the appearance here and I want to drop this appearance on to make it look like concrete. So now we've got our ground plane, and this will make it look more realistic. So I close this at the bottom here, and this is our rendering gallery. So next what I want to do is I want to work on this with the in-canvas render on. And I want to go back to scene settings to change the depth of field. And I'm going to make it even stronger to add more of an effect. Now we've got our in-canvas render settings. These allow you to change the settings of your in-canvas render. And if you want to create a render, then you click on this teapot icon here. I'm not too sure why it's a teapot, but why not? So here we've got image size that allows us to save the size of the image that we want, which depends on where we're going to be using it. Aspect ratio, where you can see the examples of the presets that they've got here. Exposure, and also the file formats. And you can see in this example which file format will be best inside of the brackets. And then a transparent background checkbox here. So depending on what version you've got, you can either render from the cloud or render it from your computer, which is called a local render. And then you can either render a standard or final render. Then we click on render. And you can see that the rendering is done now. And how fast it is really depends on how quick your computer is and also what you've put into the scene and the complexity of it as well. And once this is rendered, we can view it and we can also save it by clicking on this download icon here. Then we can change the file name to what we want and where we would like to save it. So I'm going to click cancel on that and I'm going to come back here, and then to get back to where I was, I can go from render here back to design.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it useful, then please do hit that like button and also subscribe. See you in the next one.